Join me. Imagine what we could accomplish together.
I'll join the team, be an X-Man.
We are the future, Charles, not them.
What do you think, I'm stupid?
You and I are not so different.
You can't keep denying what you are, man.
Because I'm the best there is at what I do.
You, me, we're exceptional. The power of the sun in the palm of my hand. I chose my path, you chose the way of the hero.
Plague, war, famine, morality doesn't even enter into it.
I've heard these arguments before.
Think about it, hero!
You are watching
Move, Throw.
Marvel Crisis Protocol Bonus-ode.
I am Bonus Omnis.
I am Bonus Danny.
I love that Colin very, inquisitively asked, I am Bonus Colin? And we're like, yeah!
Yes.
Nailed it.
You've listened.
Yeah.
I think it's to prove that we don't have cue cards or anything. So
yeah,
it's all us.
If anyone ever thinks that we have outlines, there's been a couple of episodes
well, we'll have notes of a topic, but it's not like we have stage notes, right? With specific line items for us. We did for the interviews.
We're not reading Wikipedia.
Times we're going through. So, and even the interviews, we had questions written down, and it's like we didn't even go in the order of the questions. We didn't even do all the questions.
Well, yeah, there's definitely been interviews where I'm I had extra questions in there and I needed to start cutting questions. And I'm like, we're just skipping this one. I think this is a less important question. We need to get to some of the ones later in the list, and we're getting short on time. Okay, Danny. So we kind of I was intending us to talk about the errata, and we started becoming armchair game designers. For better or worse. So opening Patreon question for you. Do you want the game to be more functionally killy?
Man, I feel like skirmish games should not be about killing. Right, at the small scale, because there's so few models when you're talking about a handful. It's not really about killing and wiping the board, because I think that's why you have to feel bad, right? In this game where you have turn one dazes and everything, you have so few models that when you get those dazes and you don't have a good way to come back, you just sort of lose the game very quickly. The problem with that is that game style works when it's PvE. When it's PvP, someone isn't kind of losing, they're getting demolished. And I always go back to the chess example, is that it never feels good against playing someone with a different skill level in chess. It's never a fun experience.
Okay. Elaborating on that, with the now many years of experience that we have, what do you think of the dazed and defeated? Is it defeated in MCP? KO'd. Defeated and KO'd. What do you think of this mechanic? Do you think it accomplished its goal? Or what are you thinking?
I like dazed because I like the idea of having a sort of snap point where it's like, hey, you can only do so much this character to a certain point, right?
Yeah.
We kind of hit this backside and kind of go from there. I kind of wonder if you should instead just keep getting dazed into KO'd, dazed into dazed, like a dazed to a stun sort of thing. Where it's like, hey, you're not dead, but you're back, effectively back to the day state where you can't interact, can't do things, and you're out to the next round. You kind of go through. It would give those sort of lower tier characters longevity where they don't just die round 3 and you're like, okay, well, I'm losing a whole activation going on.
That is kind of like what they do in Shatterpoint. They have instead of being you get dazed once and then you get KO'd, characters sort of have a stat that's sort of how many times you can be dazed, is a rough idea. And I've heard a rumor, I don't know if it's true, but I've heard that they tried testing some different things sometime in the last year, 2, 3 years. I have no idea if this is actually true. Where they were going, can be a thing that you persist past KO, and what does that look like? Yeah, it does. I agree with your assessment here, like on this initial point that like, it would be interesting in the sense of like, cause I think they wanted it to be like, hey, you definitely get an opportunity to like really play the character that you were excited about. And I think that the way the game played out did not end up being exactly that way, where it's like, oh, here's the model I just painted. I advance up and grab an extract. Then they die. Then they get KO'd on the top of 2 and you never get to play them. And that is, I think, a specific example of something they were trying to avoid being possible.
Yes.
And I do think multiple dazes or something, I would be down for it.
Yeah, there's just certain situations where like you kind of have to you can't make characters too good at killing because of the fact they can permanently die.
Yeah.
Because if you make someone too good at killing, they're too efficient, they just blow up a character and they're just gone, it doesn't even matter. Yeah. You're like, okay, well, there's no interaction going through. The problem is it would radically change several leaders, several abilities and how all this stuff works, the days and KO and go through there. But ultimately, like the two things about this game that truly get to me are dice and that days KO mechanic, right? Because I do like days KO on its surface, but I just feel like sometimes you get these weird situations where like, okay, I have prio, but I can't make a move that won't just result in another character just dying. So I don't really have a good option. So I guess I'm just hoping someone lives.
Yes. Yeah, and so the interesting thing is so now, I don't know if this is I know that is a false, anecdote, right? But like the toad in boiling water, I've heard that that's not a real thing. That it is a thing that sounds like it is true, where you could, slowly raise the temperature and slowly boil a toad or a frog or whatever. I've heard that that's not actually a thing and it doesn't actually work that way. But the concept is what I'm thinking about is that initially, because isn't Judgment a game where like characters don't really die? They always like.
It's been a long time since I played Judgment, but I think there is some sort of mechanic of them coming back and kind of going through.
And I think other games have had that. And that has definitely been a mechanic when I hear about that being part of a game where characters like just don't actually die and everything is always like coming back. And I will say, like, on the surface level, that's been like, when someone says that's how the game works, I'm like, is that a game I want to play? Like, do I want to play it like a League of Legends miniatures game? I'm not sure that's what I would want, but now, like, having played MCP and having played Shatterpoint a bunch, where I'm like, maybe I'm actually fine with it. Maybe it's like, when I was a Star Wars Minis player and I thought chess clocks are scary. I don't want to play with chess clocks.
They're silly.
And then once I was playing with chess clocks, I was like, good God, I don't want to go back to anything else. Like, is that where I'm at with this? Where I'm like, maybe just don't have stuff die, or, maybe you have a dazed stat on characters where like most characters get dazed twice and then KO'd. And maybe twos can be dazed once and then KO'd or something like that. Like, I like where you're heading. I think
with a stat, you could technically make certain characters keep coming back. Like their generators, you're like, oh, you just don't fall over. You just keep getting back up because you're a dumbass, right? You generate the whole thing. And so like you can kind of mess with that in a way and turn it into an actual its own mechanic in and of itself, I should say.
You have characters like Kang and Doctor Strange who fuck with time, being like, we just don't ever actually leave the table. But like other, like, Black Widow 2 threat, right? She can get dazed once and then KO'd. That could be really interesting, actually.
I think that would fundamentally change the game. I think the other aspect I was saying earlier is dice. And it's the function of exploding crits. It's just any game that's exploding crits has the same problem. It's that exploding crits cause a problem the more dice you have. The more dice you have, more opportunities for crits, more dice for roll better, more chance for explosions. It's just like the whole cascading effect happens. It's like you will always have this problem with exploding crits. It's just like there's no way to fix it, really.
Yeah, I mean, I will probably
yeah.
remember for the rest of my life being at Adepticon and going, all right, Corvus Glaive spends for, I forget what the ability's name is, but I count blanks and I count skulls. I don't roll any skulls, but I got 5 successes Pierce, which is pretty normal for him. And then Voodoo, who has 4 dice, goes, I block 6.
Yep.
And I'm like, wait, what? It was like, I think that is a core memory for me now. And
it just like, it changes the dice curve so much because it's hard to account for exploding crits just because like the way dice math works, like it's not an even distribution. So you can just have really, this is the one of the issues that makes Juggernaut feel so bad is that 8 dice can be godlike or literally nothing. And there's no way to know what's going to happen.
I definitely, so here'd be a thing. This fits into it. I wish that there were more rerolls like Star-Lord's that were like, did you roll awful? Okay. You can reroll stuff, right? Rather than just be reroll 1, because that's not really like dice consistency. That's still just value, right? Yeah. Because it helps you when you roll well and it helps you when you roll bad.
Something that doesn't appear very often is reroll all. Right? There aren't that like, many rerolls.
But like reroll all is also weird because you can reroll like when your opponent, just because your opponent spiked and you're like, oh, I'm just going to see if I can get a spike now. And like you know, I more mean something like Star-Lord's where it's like, oh, did you roll 0 hits on the attack? You can reroll all. Did you roll 0 blocks on the defense? You can reroll
what's a good example of this? It's a Wakanda thing. It's Killmonger. Is it Killmonger or Shuri? It's like they spend a power. They can count attacks as shields or shields as attacks.
It's
facing. It's one of the. Yeah,
Killmonger can, instead of counting hits, he can count shields.
Right, and so like, what even ability like that? Where it's like, hey, like a way to just like, actually, that was bad for me. Let's fix that.
Yes. And I think stuff like that is really interesting, and I'm kind of sad that mechanic didn't get played around with more. Where it is really interesting, it doesn't come up on Killmonger very often, but he is a character I played a pretty significant amount, and every once in a while you're like, oh damn, I rolled a bunch of shields on this attack. Yeah. All right, I think I'm gonna like reroll not shields, and I'm gonna count shields as successes. And so I think having some stuff like that would be would be cool. I also really like the triggers, right? When people have triggers that like, I love the choice to have, Doctor Strange's Pierce be the block symbol.
Yes.
Right. Because
by your choice.
So think about how many spenders are like, oh, I stagger you if I deal damage or got a wild or whatever. So a lot of the time when you like have a shit roll, you do nothing.
Nothing happens.
But like, imagine if more spenders were like, did you roll 3 blanks? You get to stagger them.
That's actually funny. Like on a blank, you get something for once. I don't think I've noticed that before. Except for certain triggers that count facings, right? Yeah. Yeah, that would be, or just I dealt no damage. Do X. Abilities. Yeah. Oh yes, those are also nice. Like Hulkbuster has one where it's like, hey, if your builder doesn't do damage, you just have a gainer. You just gain a power anyway.
Yeah, there's a couple of characters that are like, I gain power, but I think that would be a fun side effect if somebody is like, I just spent a whole bunch of power, rolled a whole bunch of dice, and I did no damage whatsoever. It would be cool if some of those things like were like, oh, well, here's a consolation prize. You only get this if you deal no damage. So it can be a little bit of a trade-off. You're like, well, you know, I would be very interested to see more things like that are like, oh, I had a shit roll. Well, then something happens. Or like maybe more characters who have an invulnerability effect, but it happens if you block nothing.
Yes, I could see. Well, maybe you have an auto block, right? It's sort of situation where it's like, hey, you just like damage used by 2. If you block none, it's like, oh, okay, sure. Or like you have other ways of sort of like, again, messing with the dice curve, right? And expected damage to flatten it out a little more. But that's also a function of like KOing and dazing, right? This kind of goes back to that question.
Yeah.
It's like we even talk about health and time to kill is a function of models dying. That's where it comes from.
Yeah, you could have characters who have a whole bunch of health, or like instead of giving people a shit ton of health, you could try to make them harder to spike and be like, why has there never been an ability that like, when this character suffers damage, the most damage they can take is 3 or 4.
Like capping at the top. Yeah.
Right? Like you can't do 10 damage to me in one go. You have to do it in like some increments rather than maybe
You know
like
who I'd
cutting out
love
a
that?
little part.
The Hulks.
Till
No
they
more
face
full
fucking
spike
Nightcrawler, bitches.
Yeah. But you can see situations where abilities like that could really change how a model is played. And how they work without fundamentally changing the whole game, which I think is a very interesting place to be for the game. Yeah, this is like really getting deep in the weeds of design, right? I think there's like a third point. Oh, this is like I've kind of gone back and forth about this for a long time, and it really is about affiliations, right? And it comes down to, are pulling models from out of affiliation good or bad?
So are you asking me? Like, or is it a rhetorical question?
Yes.
Yeah. So I have spent a long time wishing that they would change how they did affiliations, right? And like Avengers is too big. Like I definitively feel like
Crazy. It's
and I'm
like
glad
some of
they're
them
doing
have
Mighty
20+
Avengers.
models, right?
Yeah. But like one of my other suggestions was like, okay, if you don't want to do like, to me personally, I think every leader should have an affiliation list.
I see what you're saying.
And I think that would be a really interesting way to do it. So you can be like, hey, we're introducing a new, like, part of me thinks that just like X-Force should be, like, Cable should be an X-Men leader and his should be X-Force leadership, right? And then he should have his own list of characters, but then still have access to like the X-Men cards, right? Like something, you know, I think there's interesting ground to play around with there.
Yeah. The problem with that is that certain affiliations don't have that luxury, right? Of having like subgroups. I mean, Avengers wins out because there are millions of them. There's a bunch of bad guy affiliations, but certain groups are literally just like, this is it. It's like these 5 people, and you get to like weird design. It's like, I could see why they're a little looser with who's in the affiliation, who's not in the affiliation, and also the rules of how construction works, especially when the game was younger, because there just weren't as many models, so it was much harder to fill out certain affiliations. But as the game has grown larger, you basically, this is like the meta, you have this subset of characters that are just like perennial. And this happened with certain models over the course of the game, right? It's not like one model has done this. Like, it gets to the situation where the only reason it's really happening is because you can pull models from out of affiliation and they become best in class. Well, you couldn't have best in class if you couldn't pull in models from other affiliations.
Yeah.
It just wouldn't work.
Yeah. So I think I dodged your real question because I was providing an alternative. Because like I spent a long time going, they should change some of the affiliation lists and they should break them up. And you know, but my recent feelings about AOS make me question this logic where I do think it sucks when like suddenly your list doesn't work.
Yeah, I get that.
But I think answering in this moment, I think my heart is that I would still like to see them subtract things from this list, from lists, and like have different lists and like create some new affiliations or whatever. Like maybe Sam has his own Avengers list, like create some different things, but like some of these are just too big that it makes it completely so hard to compare Winter Guard to Avengers. Like you just it doesn't do it in a fun way.
Yeah, like the halves are eating good, right? And it's hard when you look at sort of the design of the games. Like, is this what was intended? Right? We have sort of like these big bucket affiliations that can pick and they're so big, they effectively get to pick and choose the best from other affiliations and just a soup of good models and do whatever they want.
It also makes team events kind of not shit, but it makes things much weirder for team events where you are weirdly competing for models. On that note, it would be kind of cool if AMG made it an official team event format where there was affiliation lists and there was if you're playing this affiliation and these characters are part of your list, they don't apply towards the, one per person or something like that. A really in-depth team event format. I don't want to dig into that deep.
I was thinking
we'll move.
Yeah, where I thought you were going to go with that is I thought you were going to have. Yeah, I thought you're combining ideas of your previous leader thing, like their affiliation. It's well, what if you include models as affiliated models with certain leaders? Like, hey, we're best friends. You're part of the crew when I'm in charge, but only when I'm in charge.
Yeah. I was more thinking if someone wants to play Winter Guard, all of the Winter Guard list does not hit. If someone wants to play Winter Guard, they were allowed to play 2-Point Black Widow, even if somebody else is playing 2-Point Black Widow.
Oh, they get special
something that
yeah.
Yes. Some stuff like that. But anyway, I don't want to get into the weeds in that one. We could have a whole team event episode. My question for you actually is how do you feel about this current version of the splash mechanic where you just have to take more than half of your list? Would you prefer it if it was every list can take one splash character or something like that? Or do you want it more flexible? And you're I want to just be able to make the list whatever I want. How do you feel about the current splashing?
Yeah, based on my previous comment, I would say things are actually too splashable right now. And I think it might be to the detriment of the game overall. And that's sort of the angle I'm going with here.
What if the bigger affiliations, where in the affiliation list document, affiliations had how many splash characters they can play per?
This is a funny angle to go down, right? Because
how I feel about funny angles.
Yeah, it would need to change over time too, because as affiliations get more models or new affiliations happen, so it's not really a bad thing. It'd be a very finely balanced thing. But I think
you could be Winter Guard can take maximum 2 unaffiliated, Avengers max 1 unaffiliated.
Well, you could just call it mercenaries, right? It's you cover the same aspects. Whereas an affiliation, it's we're just hiring this person, they're coming with us, how many people we can take the affiliation, it solves the same thing. I like the idea. I think ultimately what I want in the game, what I want out of the game, actually more specific, is I like the idea of having all the various groups and toys being able to play against each other and have differences in themes. And I feel sort of the problem with affiliation models, the splash mechanic, is that different lists can start to feel very samey. Where you're seeing the same models and it's hey, really the leadership is the only thing that's different, but it's the same models played in slightly different combinations. Or maybe an affiliation has a strong flavor to it, so you take some more of their characters, right? But I want more of that. I want more flavor. I don't want everyone, even though I'm running Shang and Zemo, I'm tired of Shang and Zemo. Right? That's why they're not even on the list. It's just sort of you get to a point where okay, you just
Yeah, you could make the argument, right, that a lot of the time you look at meta lists and this is a very exaggerated comment and I don't think it's necessarily true, but you'd be you play an affiliation that has Shang, Bill, or Zemo, and then you bring the other two that you aren't affiliated. Mm-hmm. Right? That's kind of an extreme example, which I don't even necessarily think is true, but I think that is how things can feel. You're like, well, I'm going to play Cabal, and then I'm going to splash Shang.
I mean, like,
Bill.
it's a reductionist way of.
So I can bring Shang, and then,
Yeah, it's reductionist, but the core conceit isn't necessarily wrong, which is effectively you can just design lists around these characters, and they are actually strong enough to carry a lot of other lists or be able to be plugged into lists and make them that much more better. I think as a design philosophy, that is bad for a game because eventually you get to the point that the meta is fixed because it's like, hey, if you're not taking these models, you're going to lose because they're just that much better. And then you get down to which is the most power gamey leaderships for these models. And then the game just ends at that point.
So Mephisto's advocation. I'm a Shatterpoint player. Shatterpoint has become a specialist game. And I think there's a very, like, if I were to read between the lines, I'm going, Asmodee knows that the Legion stuff sells the best.
Yeah.
Right?
They
Like,
have sales for sure.
Right. Like, it feels like the Legion models sell the best. And from a company perspective, they're going, why print this thing when could print the thing that sells more? Right. And this probably applies to MCP as well. And I think there's probably a degree of like, you kind of have to have everything splash because they need individual boxes to sell well enough that they can justify selling the box. And like, that's a world where we live in. They're like, do you want to play like, fundamentally, do you want to play the most perfect game of MCP that doesn't end up making enough money that they have to like stop making it? Or do you want to play 90% of the best MCP that gets more releases because it's done in a way where they can sell more product? So you don't get necessarily the perfect version of MCP, but you get the version that sells enough that you keep getting releases, you know?
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. So this is, okay. The line you're walking down, the road that we're on right now is sort of the profit incentive, right? In tabletop game versus like a board game. Because in a board game, you buy a whole set, you're done. You maybe buy an expansion or two, but most board games, you don't really get past like 2 or 3 expansions. Like that's pretty rare, right?
Yeah, we're basically playing a board game with unlimited expansions, and we are craving the expansions like we're Spider Foes.
But where in a board game, it's like, hey, I'm giving you a fixed cost up front, and that's just going through. That's not how it works for miniature games and going through. And here's the thing. I'm not saying they're wrong for trying to make money. That's not what I'm arguing for here. I just think to your point
I'm not
that,
saying that either. Yeah.
Because they have to chase a profit incentive, right? You kind of need the game to continue on and be evolving over time. I don't think it's wrong for games to evolve over time. But to your point, I think because it is evolving and models have to change over time, because you want to incentivize purchases and going through, I think you always get, essentially, if you want to have a tabletop miniatures game be active and growing, you kind of have to strive for that 90%er. And that you're never really going to have the perfect fixed game, because the only way to truly have like the perfectly asymmetrically balanced game is to sit down with the game and really fine tune it to that they feel relatively balanced with each other. But this is a moving target, right? Like you have models coming in, because of the affiliation, because of the days mechanic, like your model's output is variable throughout the game. Your model's ability to live through the game is variable, right? So you have a lot of factors in terms of how a model even performs before you even evaluate it, like the factors against your model even doing well, right off the bat. And then you're trying to strive for some sort of balance between models that don't inherently have like a flat curve of damage, right? Like, so how do you evaluate that without just having huge amounts of test data? And you're trying to do things in aggregate, right? That's the only real way to get about it there. But when you do things in aggregate, the thing about doing things in aggregate is that they're not good at moments in time. Aggregations are not good about moments in time. That's the issue.
It
doesn't matter how good the average batter hits. If the batter in this game hit 8 runs, that's what happened. It doesn't matter what the average says was supposed to happen.
Well, that was the argument with Moneyball, right? We were like, sure, do you like there's team building that's we just want to win them. Like I forget how many games is in a fucking baseball season, like a fucking 160 or some shit. Yeah,
They play
like an
multiple
insane amount.
weekends every week. Like the schedule is just ridiculous, man.
And we can compare this to miniatures games, right? Where there could be a strategy for how do you go, I just really consistently want to make the world, like what's the post game for baseball even called? Like, what's
Like
the
the World
is it
Series?
just playoffs? World Series is the end, right? But like,
Yeah.
what's the lead up to go, oh, you have a chance to get to the World Series? Is it just playoffs?
Yeah, I thought it was just the playoffs.
Okay. But so you're like, there's team composition and money balling to like get into the playoffs, right? You could be like the Steelers of NFL.
It is MLB
right?
playoffs.
Okay. It is playoffs, right? Steelers are a good example. They always have a team that makes the playoffs basically, but they always lose round one of the playoffs. They've lost like round one of the playoffs for
But
like
we made it.
yeah, like 10 years, but they're always a playoff team. And that is its own thing, right? And this is something that we talked about in the past with, say, like Kingpin. Kingpin is like a list that always makes the playoffs, that always makes top 16. And like it goes through the opening season really well. And I'm not trying to say that Kingpin's not good now. I think it has done really well, but that was an example we used in the past of like fucking Kingpin always makes Top Cut and then doesn't really proceed that far past it in most cases. And so there is a logic in like, you know, how you design things in like war games where you're like, are you playing for making Top Cut where like that's your goal, which is different than winning the whole event, where sometimes winning the whole event, you got to be a little bit riskier, right? Where you got to accept that maybe you take a risk and you don't make Top Cut at all because you are trying to outguess the meta.
Yes, which is again a moving target. There's a lot of things going on.
Yeah.
So I think overall, right, for game balance, right, especially miniatures game, and it also there's the lag effect of erratas and updates. Is that like errata happens, it's gonna take a couple months for things to settle, and it's like, well, where are you aiming for? The moment after errata, the moment a couple months later, the building up to the next one is like, what is the nominal state of the game, right? What does that even look like for people? I think there's always churn, and so
question.
that's where I try to go for variety in play styles. And that's why I went back to the models and making them interesting, because I feel like that is ultimately the place you can have the most fun with, right? Because again, someone's going to lose in a game. So it's not like, hey, you can go into the game 100% knowing that you're going to win. So you need to make the game interesting throughout for it to become an enjoyable experience, because you don't have to win to have a good memory. You have to have an enjoyable experience to have a good memory. There is a difference.
Yes. I don't want to drag on the bonus episode that much longer, but something that's been on my mind, and maybe this is a thing we talk about in a main episode, but I've definitely been thinking about capitalism with game design, right? Because we're dealing with it a bit.
Oh man, it's like a whole thing here. Yeah.
Right? Where obviously I understand why Magic the Gathering is doing Universes Beyond sets. It fucking prints money. Like it fucking makes money. Like if you could make money, you probably do it in most cases. But there's this question of like, does it make your gaming community and your game environment and your longevity of your game, and the uniqueness of the feel of your game, right? And like, there's just like, there's a part of me that like wants communist wargaming or something where it's like, can we have a game that exists in a form where we get the best possible, like most interesting version of that game that doesn't need to appeal to everyone, but the people who are working on it can like have their homes and like pay for their families and, and like, can just be the best version of the game, right? If that makes sense. Does this kind of make sense what I'm saying? I feel like
I do. I know this is the whole main topic episode because we can kind of leave it there because a lot of things dive from this point. But I think the main question you're asking here is that I think that is one of the main issues with designing games going through is that like as you change over the course of time, AMG the company is different how they were 7 years ago, right? And so how you design games, how much it costs. This is like the whole game design issue. Is that like creating games at the indie studio is one thing, then you get bigger, hire some sub teams, get through, and now you're costing $1 million of games to create games that you used to make for half of that. Then you start going like, well, wait, what's going on? How did this happen? And then there's this whole revision stuff. So I don't think tabletop miniatures is unique, but the magic issue is like profit incentives are a double-edged sword. They are a double-edged sword.
Things like I've heard that Warhammer 40K, like Warhammer the company, because I think it's now called Warhammer the company, not Warhammer the company doesn't do anything that isn't above a certain profit level. So they don't make playmats.
Nope.
Right? But like it would be really interesting if games like there are things where like I can see why this isn't super profitable for you. Like let's use an AMG example. I would love it if they could release more bases for their game. Right? But I understand that maybe that's not profitable enough in their eyes to make a pack of different bases. Where like, what if they're like, we're going to have Asgardian themed bases or whatever. And have some packs of those, because I think that kind of stuff would be really interesting and really like good for the game, and like vary things up anymore, but maybe those things don't make enough money. So maybe if we don't have the errata next week, do we want to do capitalism and wargaming as like a main topic next week?
I thought you were going with this. There's where studios like C27 comes out. I remember, double check the name, but like your custom print to order models, right? Where you're going through it and using replacements and stuff. And so I think, yes, there's a whole cottage industry around this, essentially.
Yeah. Well, and that was not, it was just like where what I wanted to talk about the most was just like, what if a gaming company doesn't have to make any concessions for like how profitable it is, and they just want to make the best version of this specific game and like let it be niche, and they're not trying to cater to the largest possible audience, but they want to make the best version of this particular game. And
this is where I said the profit is like a double-edged sword, because I think part of what helps games grow and evolve and get better is because of profit instead of, right? And they're sort of like, hey, what do people actually like and respond and go through? But I feel like, again, the double-edged sword aspect here is that you can end up chasing the dragon a little too hard, right? And you go on this road of like, hey, this is the whole MCU movie thing, right? Where it's like, hey, you're making great movies. You now made so many movies, you diluted your own products. And now people don't want to watch your movies. So now you have to like work even harder, right, than you did before, where if you just set out the gas a little earlier, you might not have to work as hard for much money now. So it's like, did you really accomplish what you wanted? Like, I don't know.
Well, and that's the thing, like, obviously, if Marvel wanted to make, or if AMG wanted to make the most money, they would just keep printing Spider-Mans and keep printing Captain Americas and keep printing Iron Mans, and they would just keep making more and more versions of those characters. But they very clearly are trying to walk a balance of we're going to drop more mutants. We know they're going to be super popular. We're going to drop some more web warriors. We know they're going to be super popular. We also got some weird shit in here, right? We got you got Moondragon. You don't know who Moondragon is? Yeah, we know.
Let's go.
But and here's Phyla-Vell, and like they do some shit to like try to cater to the hardcore Marvel audience, because they have some hardcore Marvel fans in the studio. So they're clearly trying to do that, but it obviously like doesn't make the most money. And so that's where it's interesting. Anyway, man, all right. If we don't have the errata by next week, maybe we're going to talk about this more in the main episode. We're going to talk about capitalism and wargaming, baby. This could be interesting. We could be signing up for trouble. Precursor. So if you're a patron and you're listening to this episode, I think we're going to do this. If you have questions that you want to get into that episode, or you maybe have some thoughts that you want us to read off, we can make this happen. So, all right, Danny, I think we should wrap things up here.
Yeah. We went super long this time.
Yeah. I can't call this episode Colonation, but yeah, this is fun. Danny, I love talking to you, buddy.
It's always great. It's always great. It's been a great summer.
Yeah. All right. Move, throw, nerds. Peace.
See you later.
What would you prefer? Yellow spandex